This teardown is going to be a little bit different. I'm hopefully going to show you our normal process for inspecting and tearing down an LS core. This is an L93, which is a 6.2 liter all aluminum V8 out of like a 2009 and up. Escalade or Denali or even some Tahoe's got this engine. And the difference between an L93, which is 9 to like 13 or 14, versus an L92, which is 7 and 8, is in 9, they added displacement on demand. So if you're looking at one of those vehicles and you wish to avoid all of those nightmares associated with displacement on demand, buy a 7 or 8. This core I picked specifically in the hopes that it's a good core. So there may not be a whole bunch of carnage here. I'm forewarning you guys. I mean, it could be bad. You never really know. But I'm hopefully going to get a good short block out of this, a good pair of heads, and we'll find some minor issue as to why this engine was replaced. I've done a little bit of initial inspection here, and the only thing that I can tell that is broken, it has a broken vacuum port on the intake manifold, which is kind of a bummer. It means I can't sell the intake complete. I'll strip it and move the parts over. This has blue injectors, which there's two different part numbers. They're either 50 or 58 pound injectors, so that's good. Those will be worth a little bit of money. It has 823 heads, which are the same as LS3 and other 6.2 liter engines. They all have the same head, whether they're 821, 823, or 5364. And it's got what looks like one broken exhaust manifold bolt. It's missing the oil pressure sending unit, which could be a clue. May have low oil pressure. I find that on a lot of my cores. But outside of that, it has no aftermarket inspection ports on the side of the block, so that's really good. I haven't even checked to see if it's got oil in it. I hope it's drained. That's supposed to be drained, but you know, we all know that's not always the case. As per usual, the first thing we're going to do is pull the plugs and see what they look like. Haha. You didn't get very far with that. The plugs all look pretty good. One did break on its way out, but nothing is smashed. They all look about the same, at least the electrodes do. They're a little tan. It's about right. Maybe a little bit worn. They probably need to be replaced, but no signs of major catastrophe. Next, we're going to pull the intake, which looks like most of the bolts are most of the way loose. Outside of some junk and dust and debris, I don't see anything like any signs of any major catastrophe in any of these ports. Everything looks all right. There's no chunks of metal, no rings, so that's a good sign. Next, we're going to pull the exhaust manifolds. And while I'm in here, I'm going to get this motor mount off as well. Awesome, no extra breathers. Let's get that dipstick out. Oh. Oh. Well, that dipstick definitely doesn't want to come out. Let's get started on the driver's side valve cover. I don't see anything wrong yet. Now on to the passenger valve cover. Section's pretty clean in here. Don't see anything broken or damaged yet. Now we're going to get the rockers and push rods out of this side. Those look pretty good. Let's go to the next side. Aside from being much cleaner than the other side, I don't see anything wrong here either. Time to get the head off driver's side. Please don't leak on me. All looks pretty good, actually. I don't see any damage to any of the bores. There's no crowns broken off a piston. That's what I see most of the time, is a melted or broken piston. In this case, I don't really see that. I don't really see even a lot of rust stainings or anything, so I don't think this engine sat outside, which is rare for me. Time for the passenger head. This looks pretty nice in here as well. There's a little bit of rough stuff from some water sitting in this cylinder here, so maybe I was wrong about this not sitting outside. But it's not terrible. I don't see any broken pistons. No vertical grooves. Let's see if we can turn this thing over. Before I turn this over, spray a little WD-40 in here, kind of help it break up that rough stuff in that cylinder. I do this with every short block, just to make sure that no rust forms on the cylinder walls if it happens to sit on the shelf for any duration of time, or if it gets shipped during inclement weather. And it turns over quite nice. This is what I like to see. Both the heads look pretty good, although I really can't tell their condition until they come out of the parts washer. These like to crack right between the intake and exhaust valve seats. The rectangle port heads are so bad about that. It's almost 1 and 2 for me anymore. I probably have 20 cracked heads sitting here at the shop, and I do sell them. People do a lot of extensive work to fix them. They're just not worth hardly anything anymore. We've made it this far without much of a mess, so I'm assuming that by pulling this water pump, yeah, I can't get that lucky. Huh. I guess I can. Next, we're going to pull the lifters and trays out and see how the rollers look on the bottom of the lifters and check the cam for damage. Well, all the rollers look pretty good, and they all move freely. There's no wear or scoring or any kind of damage. I also check the lifter galleys for damage. The cam looks good so far. Everything looks just fine. I just want to get this dipstick out of here. Just let go. Oh my God. Stubborn. Let's move on to the passenger side. Same story for this side. All of the lifters, the rollers, it all looks pretty nice. I don't see any signs of damage. And the lifter galleys all look good. I don't see any cam damage. Nothing yet anyway. Now it's time we get the engine flipped upside down and pull the pan. Alright, let's pull all the 10s out and get the pan off. Actually looks pretty clean. I mean, it's dirty, but I don't see any debris in there. These are all good signs. Now we're going to take a look at the pickup and see if there's any debris. And one little piece of something, maybe. I don't really see much. Looks pretty clean to me. Let's go ahead and pull the pickup and the windage tray. One thing I like to look for on these is the O-ring for the oil pump that's on the pickup. They like to collapse. Oof. That one's pretty flat, but it is still pretty soft and pliable. I've seen them where they're much worse than this. It's not terrible. Let's get the rest of this windage tray off. Maybe now I can get this dipstick out of here. Get out! Well, that's not going to do it. I need a real hammer. So far, this looks pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Don't worry about that. But we are gonna pull a couple rod caps, see what those look like, and then we're gonna pull a main cap and see what that looks like. Fairing doesn't look too bad. Actually looks really nice. Let's see what the top one looks like. Usually that's the one that'll show damage first. Oh, get out of there. Why you gotta fight me? I'm gonna put you back in. Well, I couldn't really get that bearing out of that rod very easily, and I don't really want to take it all the way out because I don't see any damage. It looks pretty good. I'm going to check a couple more and see if I find anything, and then we'll move on to the mains. Check another rod cap here. That bearing's pretty nice too. Let's look at the one on the top. As you can see, that top bearing is in pretty good shape. There's no grooves, no signs of damage at all. Next, we're going to check a main as well. I typically only check one main. In my experience, the rod bearings go before the mains on these engines. But we still check them because I don't want anything to get by. Well, there's a little bitty groove in there. I can't feel it. I can only see it. It's just a discoloration. I can feel it a little bit, but I don't see any damage to the crank. I'm going to go ahead and put this back together. One other thing I like to check, I like to get a better look at the cam by removing the VOM, which is the DOD valley cover. In my experience, when the cam bearings are very bad, which does happen on these engines on occasion, you'll find metal deposits and signs of metal in this valley here. And I don't really see anything to point me in that direction. And we didn't really see a whole lot of metal deposits inside this engine either. So I don't think the cam bearings are going to be that bad. But again, it's a bearing, and some of these things should be replaced before you build it. That is about as far as I normally would go on an engine that shows no signs of major or catastrophic failure. We checked the rod bearings, the main bearings, we looked at the cylinder walls, and it even turns over nice. We looked at all the lifters, the lifter galleys, and the cam. We inspected the pickup, and the inside of the pan had no debris. I'm pretty confident, in my experience, that this is a good builder short block. And when I talk about builder engine, I'm not talking about something you can slap a pair of heads on and go. I'm talking about an engine that needs to be rebuilt with no major hard part damage. Just install new rod bearings, install new piston rings, new oil pump, new timing chain. These are things I tell everyone that buys a short block from me to replace before they use the engine. As far as using some of these used parts, I know I've gotten a little bit of flack over some of the parts that I've discarded during my LS teardowns, and I think people are talking about lifters and push rods. And the truth is, how many can a guy actually use? I tear down so many of these engines that I just can't keep them all. Plus, used lifters and push rods, it's not a good idea. Those parts are very inexpensive. New, it's always a good idea to replace them. I do, however, keep all of the hardware from these engines, aside from head bolts. That stuff comes in handy. I can't tell you what I have make-oriented bins at my house. I have GM bins and BMW bins and Mazda bins. It's fantastic when you're building a car. The whole point of this video was to show you the process in which I go through and my employees go through when we tear down an engine and inspect an engine for reselling. I hope you learned a lot from this video. If you'd like to buy parts from this engine or any of the other engines I've torn down, I'm going to leave an email in the description of this video. And like always, I love all the comments, all the suggestions, and even when I get corrected, I love it all. And I'll catch you on the next one.